folks, today is Tuesday, January 16. My name is Cihan. And this is the 18th episode of Keeping Realistic. Enjoy.
Hello folks. As you heard from Ronia, today is Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. My name is Todor Vodov, and this is the 18th episode of Keeping It Realistic. In this show, we are going through the projects that have been posted in the Chaos Campus Facebook group within the last week, talking about their strengths, but also pointing out their weaknesses and suggesting eventual ways to improve them. We do this as a live event so that you can actually actively participate in the discussion of the works. So please gladly use that. Be active, let us communicate. I see a lot of you already in the comments. Hi Leslie, hi Houssem, Flatson, Abdi, Simon, Sebastian, Helen. So Abdi says, how sweet was that? I really hope this small surprise gave you a bit of joy and light into this day. This was the idea behind it. Today we have a ton of work and a ton of projects in front of us that we all want to discuss. So I will try to keep this first part, this announcement, news, interesting stuff part, as short as possible, because again, otherwise we won't be able to go through all the projects, and this is my goal for the day. So, of course, as usual, we will take a second to appreciate and briefly take a closer look at the cover image for today's show. The works featured on it were contributed by Cihan, Alessio, and Houssem. Congrats to all of you. This time, I gotta admit that it was especially difficult which images to choose, as there were lots of quality contenders. And for the case that some of you might think, well, my work is good and I posted it and an image of mine never was a part of this triptych, why didn't you choose mine instead? Because all of the three, Cihan, Alessio, and Houssem, have already had their images into this collage. Let me explain. The goal of this image selection is to achieve an aesthetically pleasing composition for those cover images that you see here. For the last one, it was this more easygoing, bright, laid-back, nicely mooded composition. And this time, to have some contrast, to show a different aspect of our group, I decided to go into this grittier, darker mood. And personally, I very much enjoy this contrast because it greatly shows the variety of the works that are featured in this group. So here I am back again. We can leave this and also this. Simon says, kids are the only thing that bring more joy than 3D. I absolutely agree with you on this one. Next topic, our monthly challenge. Winter in the City, it's actually a bi-monthly one. It started in December and it goes until the end of January. So you have 2 more weeks until January 31st, which will be the deadline to submit your work. I'm really looking forward to those contributions. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how many works to expect. Last time we did this reproduction, and with the reproduction, I could at least assume how the final images would look like, but this time it would be a complete surprise. So every contribution I'm very excited about. And remember, this is, even though the biggest goal of this is just to motivate you and to inspire you so you can gladly help each other, it is still a competition with prizes to earn in the end. Licenses for 1, 3, and 6 months, and tomorrow I have a talk with Chaos, with Claudio from Chaos, and I would really be happy if this time not only the winner, but also the second and the third place get their social media features by Chaos. So they make a post, and in this post, the first prize, but also the second and the third one are visible. I think this would be really great, because this way the first three will get exposure, and exposure, as you know, is very, very important. It seems like there was a small issue with the stream. I hope you can still hear and see me. So enough for the monthly challenge. Let's go to the next topic, which is the Chaos Campus live show being back again. First episode for 2024 will be this Thursday, January 18th. It's the usual time, 5 p.m. You gotta check your own local time zone and see when it is, but it's like the usual time. The registration link you can find posted in the group. Just follow it, book your seat, and you can watch. The first guest will be the team from somewhere. It's a really large British visualization studio with a rich and long history behind their backs. Truly fascinating works in their portfolio as well. So my recommendation is that you go to their works, go through their portfolio or to their homepage. I will just share it in our comment section. Take a look at it. If you see something, no matter what it is, if you see something that you find to be fascinating, write it down. Just in order to know how they made it. If you're wondering, wow, how did they achieve this and that? Just write this question down, and once the next Chaos Campus live show comes on Thursday, just paste your written down question in the Q&A section of the show, so Nikos can read it to the guests, and Laurie and Nick, who are the ones who represent the studio, Nick and Laurie, will be able to answer your question in real time. And again, this is why we do these shows as live shows and not as recordings. It would be way easier and more convenient for both Nikos and I to just make pre-recorded shows. But the truth is that these live shows give you just this seldom chance to actually reach out and talk to people. In the case of the Chaos Campus live show, it's those awesome people from these awesome studios or these awesome artists that Nikos introduces to us. In the case of the Keeping It Realistic show, we can just discuss in real time, talking about the works in the group. And again, I think this is way cooler than just watching a recording. So again, use this chance and write down or think about some questions. And once the next Chaos Campus live show comes around the corner, just ask them, and you will just get this information directly from the source. It cannot be better than that. With this being said, I think we're 10 minutes in. It's time to jump into the projects, because again, there is like a ton of them to talk about, something like 16 projects. I'm not sure if we will be able to go through all of them, but I will do my best that we do so. It will be a bit, the reviews will probably be a bit on the quicker side today, but I will still try to say everything which is important. So let's start off where we left last time. It was here. This is the last show, and the first work that comes afterwards is this one by Janita and his miniature photography scene. I see Wachu joined us. Hi, glad to see you. Let's jump in. What does Janita have to say? The Lego battle, miniature photography, the software uses 3ds Max and Corona. The post-production is in Photoshop, and Janita hopes we like it. Hi Cihan. Personally, I'm as a Star Wars and Lego fan, it's very difficult that I don't, but let's take a closer look at this work. The description is really fine, and maybe before we start getting into Janita's work, let's take a general look at this miniature Lego photography, which, by the way, is a really big thing. There are tons of examples of this online. I think that some photographers have really specialized on just doing shots like this, which is pretty amazing. And what's typical for it and for miniature photography in general are three main things. First of all, it's the storytelling. You see it in each and every image that we see here. Like the dude here taking a photo of the bus, or this one who acts as if he just painted the asphalt and so on. The second thing is the very heavy depth of field, because this is miniature photography. So you see here on this example, the foreground's very blurry, the background is very blurry with heavy bokeh effects, and it's only a small area which is really in focus. And the last thing, and this is more in regard of trying to reproduce this as a rendering, is that the material, especially the material the figurines are placed on, has very pronounced properties. So in this case, you see the sand, you can see every piece of sand here. Here you can clearly see the asphalt structure, every crack, everything. So you gotta be very detailed, you gotta work with textures that are of really, really high quality, and the textures need to be perfectly set up so that this looks really good. Now, back to Janita's work. Again, as a Star Wars and a Lego fan, I am a big fan of what I see here. The scene I find to be pleasantly composed. It's not over the top. It doesn't look too staged. It's more like somebody got a Lego set for Christmas, for example. See this one? And then it came with a few small figurines, and then they just placed the figurines around on their work table, for example, and started taking photos. I have done something like this a lot of times, so I know what I'm talking about. It looks rather like this and less like one of the photos that we just saw here that are trying to tell a very small and short story, like the fisherman fishing sardines from this can, for example. Other than that, I find the miniature photography aspect also very perceptible, very, very noticeable here, because we have this foreground which is blurry, and especially the background which is even more blurry. We see it here a lot in the second shot as well. This is really nicely pulled off. The focus works fine. The depth of field is really sweet. The blurriness is also very clear. This is pretty awesome. Materials and lighting also look authentic. The book cover of this book seems like it has a bit of an issue, I think, but book covers are very different, so it may just be the way it looks like. Nevertheless, this is material-wise and lighting-wise, it looks nice. I can imagine that this is someone's work desk, and they have just put different staples of books there in order to achieve a high ground. And then they started playing around with the figurines. On the negative side, I think that there is a scaling issue, because Luke seems to be larger than Han Solo, which isn't the case. It should be, they obviously, as Lego figurines, they should be the same size. And in real life or in the movies, Han Solo is way bigger. Next thing is what I don't quite understand in terms of scaling are those plants that also seem to be scaled down to fit the figurines. This doesn't make a lot of sense, because usually when you do miniature photography, you just concentrate on these mini figurines, but everything else stays big. And this is the trick, or this is the joke about them. So if you start scaling down the other props, it doesn't make so much sense anymore. Regarding the trees, usually these are no trees in, like, for the miniature photography they're supposed to be, but in real life this would be just the tips of bushes or shrubs or something. And usually you would have to put them into a vase, because what we have here, it seems like soil with grass and plants, which is just scaled down, which again doesn't make so much sense. Storytelling wise, again, I'm missing a bit the strong storytelling aspect of what we saw on these miniature shots that I just shown you. Even though I must admit that on the second shot we have Vader just swinging in from the side, which adds a lot of storytelling and could become actually very, very interesting in the next moment. But again, maybe it's just a casual shooting of somebody who got his figurines and is just playing with them now. And all in all, I think this one was fun to make, and it was also, for me at least, fun to look at. Now let's move on to the next work, which is by Cihan, who just joined us 5 minutes ago. Glad to see you here. The project is simply labeled Lighthouse. You know me by now after almost 20 shows. I would usually complain about this description not being sufficient. But in this particular case, for some reason, I'm not feeling like I am missing on something. This one-word description here kind of just adds to the simplicity and solitude, maybe, of the whole scene, so I can fault it. Nevertheless, Cihan, it's always great to at least know the software combination, so that we can talk about it if tips are needed. Generally speaking, I would say that those lone, autarkic lighthouses are a very beloved motive for paintings, for photography, and this has been going like this for years. I just search for lone lighthouse atmospheric, and then you see the awesome images that we get out of this. So I would say there is just something very cool and something very special about this. And honestly, with your shot, you absolutely captured this emotion. I really love it. The atmosphere of it is amazing, mostly because of this evening cloudy sky. The great contrast between this dark and gloomy global illumination and the warm and hopeful light of the lighthouse. The modeling also looks great. I really like how the fence here isn't repetitive, because its randomness adds so much authenticity to the scene. Regarding the landscape, we don't really see a lot of it, but we can imagine how it goes. So we have here the higher ground, then we have this grass area with the long grasses, and then we have a bit of a sandy shore, and then comes the waves. So even though we see just a fragment of the landscape, we know how it actually looks like, which is a great way to tell a story. Next thing is the materials. I really like how this side of the lighthouse, which is facing the water, the waves, the sea, the ocean, whatever it is the one where we see the most weathering, because this makes a lot of sense. Usually the heavy winds, they come from the sea or from the side of the water, and they are also very salty, so they are not especially great. They're pretty erosional, let's call them like this. So we have on the side facing the waves, we certainly have this very heavy weathering effects, which we don't have on the backside. So this is a minimal thing, but it makes a lot of sense and shows a great attention to detail on Cihan's side. Negative, I really don't know what to say here. Maybe the only thing that I would add or change would be adding a bit more detail around the light source up here. If we Google this, you will see that these light sources look a bit like Sauron's eye. So there is a bit more detail to them, and I think if you were to add it, the image would become even better. But this is honestly a nitpick. However, this image as a whole, I will just zoom out once again, this image as a whole is a great example of how impactful a simple image can be, as long as all of its components are really high level. So we have good modeling here. It's not a ton of it, but it's absolutely sufficient. We have very realistic and authentic materials. We have atmospheric lighting, very, very important for a strong mood. And of course, a fine composition. And the final outcome, to put it in Mir's words, is this very, very strong image, and I really love it. Congrats on that, Cihan. I see Fawad joined us. Simon says, I think a low sunlight would benefit the lighthouse, probably creating a chiaroscuro effect to make it more dramatic. It could be, but I think that in this case, going for this really, really gloomy gray sky is just a stronger image. It could be that the chiaroscuro effect makes a more beautiful image in the end, or one which is even better or more optimally lit. But I think when it comes to the strongest image, I think this was the better choice. My mom joined us. She says, very cool. I know that she would love something like this. I have my rock and metal taste in music and for darkness in general from her and my dad. So it makes sense. But yeah, also, Mom, I'm trying not to say the whole time. I'm really doing my best, but occasionally it happens. Let's move on to Leslie, who says, hello everyone, here are some images I created as a part of my 3ds Max and Corona render training. I made this scene using Paola Caruso's photograph of the Aurora apartment project by Coda Arquitectura. I would love to read your thoughts and I wish you all a happy and prosperous new year. All the best to you, Leslie. Glad to see you back in the group. May your year also be healthy, inspiring and very, very successful. Regarding the presentation, it's a great description. It's awesome that you not only credited the architects, but also the original photographer. Maybe also share a link to the original project so that one doesn't have to search for it in case they want to see it. I had to, but that's okay. You described it so correctly that it was very, very easy to actually find it. Regarding the image presentation, I gotta say that visually it looks good, but in terms of variation and having a more diverse set of images here, it really fails because it's very, very repetitive. More or less on every image here we see just the same part of this living room. Anyway, before we go into the projects, let's take a quick look into this whole apartment because it's actually a very nice architectural project. Here is the scene that you decided to recreate with the same cat. And then we see the cat leading us around the house, which is actually a great way of storytelling. So maybe incorporate it in your future works that you have this one thing, whatever it is, let's say a cat, and then you take this cat and in the living room or in the bedroom, it's lying on the bed, then in the kitchen it just moves there or something. I think this is something pretty cool, to be honest. But yeah, let's continue and take a quick tour through the apartment. We see the bedroom here, we see the dining room area, and the whole living room, the fragment of which you visualized. Again, dining room area and the kitchen. This is, again, I think part of the kitchen. This, I'm not sure if this is the same bedroom. I think it is a different one, a bathroom. So all in all, it is a pretty interesting and cool project that one can actually recreate all the spaces from. Personally, I gotta admit that I don't find the scene that you chose to recreate to be the most spectacular one out of the whole apartment. This is why I showed everything. But of course, this is a subjective matter, and as you're here with us today, which is great, gladly let us know why did you decide to pick up exactly this corner, and let's say not the whole living room or the bedroom or the dining room. If I were you, or if I decided to recreate it, I would probably start with this one. I'm not sure, again, this is not right or wrong, it's just my opinion and your opinion. So gladly just let us know. And in the meantime, I will just go back to the original reference and then back to your work. Mahmoud joined us, Mario joined us. Hello folks, glad to see you. So, on the positive, whatever the reason is that you picked this one, your reproduction is very, very faithful. The color palette, the lighting, the visual clarity, even the damn cat is the same. Okay, let's take a look at this. You just cut out this one and placed it in your shot, which I think is an amazing idea. I don't say it as anything as a criticism. It is a great idea to do this, because this way the images match even better and there is nothing that speaks against it. So this was a smart move. Also, I just, you see, I just had to take a look if this is the original image or if it's yours. So I think it's a really, really faithful recreation. Modeling and texturing wise, everything is mostly also very good. The assets you have used are of good quality. The ones that you have used as a substitute, like the sofa, for example, are great substitutes. You see, they have the same spirit as the original assets. The additional angles that you have, this one and this one, are also quite pleasant to look at, especially the first one here. I really like the blurry foreground and kind of background and the focus on the sofa and this lamp here. The framing is also quite pleasant on this one. Regarding the framing of the second one, now this is again not really right or wrong. It's more of a point of view and opinion type of thing. I don't like cutting off major objects in a scene. So if I were to create this one, I would do it like this, because I think this is like a coma composition. But I gotta admit that in your case, everything which really matters to the scene, so all the small assets and details, the glasses here, the phone, the keys, the earbuds and the plant, everything is pretty much centered. What we have here is just the rest of this plate, and I think it's easy for everybody to imagine how it just ends outside the image. So you didn't cut off anything essential. It's just more of a take a look at both versions of it and see which one you prefer type of thing. Now the next thing which bothers me is the repetition on this concrete texture behind the couch. Texture repetition is something we should really avoid as much as it gets, because it just screams this is rendered. And this is nothing what we want, right? We want this to be convincing, we want this to look realistic, and texture repetition leads in the opposite direction. The good thing, however, especially with a central perspective image like this, is that you can easily fix it in Photoshop, in the post-production, with a clone stamp tool and a spot healing brush tool. This is what I did. I took your image as it was. You see the texture repetition very easily here. And this is my version of it. I spent maybe around 3 minutes fixing it. So the longer you do it, the better it will become. But I think this is already good. And then you can also play around with different ideas, so to speak, because you see the one grout that you have here, I removed, but I left the second and the third one, because this way the wall has a kind of a partitioning, let's call it. We have one partition where the couch is and another partition in front of or behind this couch table with the lamp. And I think this is also adding a layer of small storytelling or maybe composition. Other than that, it's not much to say. The table here, the edges seem a bit edgy, as it needs a bit of a higher interpolation. And the lamp here, it needs a cable. Now, you don't need to show how it is plugged into a socket, because oftentimes this could be a lot of work. It's often enough to just have an extruded Bezier spline that you just let flow down from the table and just disappear under the couch, and it will make way more sense, because I don't think that this lamp is battery operated. As for the black and white versions, because you have also shared these black and white versions, personally I don't really need them, to be honest. They don't really add real value to this project, in my opinion. They look nice, but if you already have the colorful ones, decide. Do you want a black and white session? There is nothing speaking against it, but then go with it. Don't upload the colorful ones, or just upload the colorful ones and leave the others one out. But with this being said, it's a very good recreation. just generally speaking, coming back to what I told you in the beginning, that I don't find this certain space. I see you wrote something, so I'll read it in a minute. But going back to the beginning, when you decide to recreate something, when you choose the project to reproduce, and you plan to later share it in a portfolio or with your fellow 3D artists, make sure that the space or the thing that you recreate is actually fascinating enough to capture the attention of your audience. Because if not, if you just want to experiment, if you just want to recreate it for the sake of testing materials, lighting, whatever, then you can also keep it. I don't say that this is a bad thing, but I think that specifically in this apartment, there are areas, spaces, rooms that would be more attractive and fascinating to look at. That's it. But let's see what you say. You say it looked the easiest to recreate since I'm fairly new to 3ds Max. Okay. This is a fair point. I understand it. It makes sense. It's the easiest. But again, if we go back to the project, you can then try to just make the whole room, because the whole room isn't way more difficult, to be honest, and then you can still concentrate more here. But if you're so new, I didn't really have the impression of you being that new, because the works of yours that I have talked about so far have always been of pretty good quality, so it didn't show that you're so new, which is a good thing, by the way. But anyway, again, just think in perspective. Think about the clients. If you make something like this, will a client see it and be like, wow, this is amazing? If not, then maybe go with the space which is a bit more challenging to you, but then at the same time will provide you with a more fascinating and captivating image in the end. So let me take a look. You say I'm easing into the software. Thanks for the tip. You're very welcome. Abdi says, hi Leslie, nice images. Okay, new comments keep coming and this gets pushed up. If you turn on the lights that are facing the wall and also add a wire to the lamp light on the side table, it wouldn't hurt the image at all. And since you have those lights already facing the wall, maybe there should be an image hanging. Just a personal opinion, keep it up. Of course, you're always free to add stuff on your side. If you like the simplicity of the concrete wall, then just run with it, but you can always hang an image or some wall art there. You're free to do this. Leslie seems to be thankful the images are done in SketchUp and V-Ray, and you're learning. Oh yeah, okay. The works that you submitted before were done in SketchUp and V-Ray, and now you're currently learning 3ds Max and Corona, so you're playing it safe. I understand. Okay, I understand. Well, this is very legit. Way to go, man. Let's move on to Konstantinos. I'll quickly read what he wrote here. We already talked about this one. We at Mesh Mastery recently shared a free lesson on 3D modeling in 3ds Max. We were initially planning to make the lesson start from 3D modeling, moving to UV unwrapping, texturing and rendering, but I took Todorovadov's advice and I decided to keep it short and explain a few things rather than trying to cover it all. So we basically covered 3D modeling and UV unwrapping only. Enjoy the free lesson if you haven't already watched it. Now, just to clarify, the way he puts it here, it sounds like he wanted to share more information. I was like, no, just share modeling and unwrapping. It was more like, personally, this is my personal view, and I just stated it to Konstantinos. It's, instead of just briefly mentioning the 4 topics, so modeling, unwrapping, texturing, and rendering, I think it is better to concentrate more in depth into less topics for the same duration. So this is what ended up happening in the end, and I still find it to be the better option, because as he showed us the UV mapping, you could actually see how he does it on all the surfaces, and I think this provides more value than just, briefly showing us everything, because we know that unwrapping and texturing and rendering exist. We want to know better how exactly they work, right? Anyway, if you haven't watched it, follow the link. drop them a like, because it's always great when people share free knowledge with us. And Konstantinos did a great job with this tutorial. Next we have Luis Baltazar. Hola a todos, comparto rendas de cocina para un cliente. I don't speak Spanish, so please write in English. What the translation tells me is that it was a client's kitchen for a client. So much I could already assume from the Spanish part here. As for the second thing, is that he offers rendering and kitchen building for a good price under a certain number. My pronunciation is on point. Yeah, dope. Anyway, as you may imagine, I'm not really happy with the description of this one. First of all, it is in Spanish and we have English as the official language. Secondly, it is, of course, very self-promotional. It's like, yeah, look at my work, reach me here and there, this is my Instagram. And at the same time, there is not enough information regarding the project itself, which is what interests us the most. As you know, it's not an issue to share your Instagram link or Behance, but once you share or describe your project, concentrate more on the project and less on self-promoting yourself. Casper says, I thought you speak Spanish. No, I just look like I speak Spanish, but I don't. But I want to learn it. I like Spanish and Italian as well. I don't like French that much, to be honest, no offense. I just don't like how this language sounds. But Spanish and Italian I like a lot. And when it's summer and I'm, getting darker, and if I have my dreads again at some point, they used to be black. You see now my hair is getting gray already. But a lot of people would actually stop me and ask me where do I come from, if I come from South America or from some Spanish-speaking country. So I obviously kind of look like somebody who speaks Spanish, but I don't. I speak only German, English, and Bulgarian. That's enough for now. So let's take a look at the kitchen and review it. First, the good parts. I actually missed this one. Even if I'm not happy with the description, when it comes to the images, I gotta admit that the presentation is actually pretty good. The angles are not repetitive but nicely varied, and also the visual consistency is given, so this part is pretty good. So let's go through them. We have a central perspective entering the kitchen. I assume we have the left side of it and the right side, so every side is properly shown. The kitchen design, now we often see those decorative looking kitchen blocks that are simple partitions without handles whatsoever. Let me take a look. I think I found an example on 3D Sky. Stuff like this, which, how do I say it? It looks very general, very generic as well. More like a catalog thing more than something that you see in real life. And this one, on the contrary, looks kind of authentic and also very functional, to be honest. It's not overly designed, it's not overly stylish, so to me, personally, it feels more relatable, which I enjoy. Secondly, modeling and material-wise, I see nicely chamfered edges, I see reasonably grouted partitions, decent materials in general when it comes to reflections and everything. The lighting and the framings, by the way, are also quite solid. Now, the lighting isn't very emotional, but it does a good job at illuminating this kitchen. And when it comes to the focal length, which you will see and which we generally don't like to have this very low focal length value and this very strong field of view, sometimes it is just necessary. There is a reason why it exists, right? And sometimes in confined spaces, it is just necessary to use it to be able to showcase more. And to be honest with you, I still prefer it over camera clipping, because to me, at least, camera clipping often produces spaces that you will never be able to see this way in real life, because you just cut up some walls, you remove them, and then you place the camera somewhere, and then you make a very nice shot. without this type of distortion. But again, you will never be able to view the kitchen like this. While here, even though there is a certain distortion to the kitchen, it is actually more natural. It feels more natural, at least to me. Gladly let me know what you think. And here, the good things, and there are some things that I don't like this much. First thing is generally paying more attention to details. Some of the kitchen appliances don't fit that nicely into the spaces that are for them. Let's say with a washing machine, maybe they left a bigger space for a bigger washing machine, but if so, then gladly put also a bigger washing machine in there, because these gaps here are kind of ugly, to be honest. And also the oven and the microwave don't really nicely fit into the spaces that they have. Additionally, not all the door handles are centered. It is not a big mistake, but still, make it right. The next thing is, and this is on a technical side, maybe I see it as an architect and nobody else will see, who doesn't care for things like that much. You should leave larger grouts. And this is something general. This is not only for Louis, but generally speaking, I often see kitchens where there are like 2 or 3 millimeters between the top edge of this cupboard front and the ceiling. And you gotta know that real life is not perfect. Ceilings are never perfectly leveled. Same with this. This is wood. Wood usually changes form over time and so on. So to make sure that you can always be able to open those cupboard doors, you should leave a larger gap, at least 5 millimeters, but better a centimeter, so that even if the ceiling is not leveled, you can still open it without any issue. Maybe this is a bit too technical, but this is the way I see it. Also, 2 more things. The baseboard here, it doesn't work the way it is depicted. So you either have a partitioning here and then you have some tiles or something, or you just, let's say it's made of laminate. If it is made of laminate, then remove the partitioning. And one last thing, when it comes to this background here, it seems like we don't have a backdrop. It's just like white. In cases like this, I always recommend, even if you, let's say you have already an HDRI on the outside, which provides the lighting, but it has a very, very high output, which ends up making it just look white. In cases like this, just make a second version of this HDRI, and then plug it into the background reflection and refraction override slots, and then give it a lower output value so that you can still see something on the outside. Because there are 2 main reasons for this. The first one is that it makes the scene more authentic, because even if you live in a high-rise building, you usually see something on the outside. Other buildings or clouds or some mountains in the distance, and it's never just purely white. And the second thing, and it's even the more important one, once you have something on the outside, you also have better reflections and refractions on the inside, because things like the handles here have something to reflect, and glassy or refractive objects have also something to refract. So it generally makes your whole work more realistic. With this being said, I think that this is generally a good work. Just pay more attention to the small details, be a bit more precise. Maybe consider light to be more than just something to illuminate your scene, but also something that can add some emotion to it. I see Arthur just joined us, and he and Bartosz can tell you a lot about this. And please write in English, not promoting yourself, but your work. With this being said, hi Arthur. We move on to Reza with an exterior design of a house in London. Description-wise, you can gladly tell us a bit more. Is it your design? Like it says exterior design, but is it your design, or you visualize the design only? Also, what software combination did you use to create those images? Things like these are very interesting to know, and also useful, because if I want to give you a tip how to change this and that, it's good to know the software that you used. Regarding the image presentation, the visual consistency is given, but the shots are, first of all, not very varied because we just always see the front of this house. And the second thing, and most of all, the images seem rather muted. We'll talk about it more. Let's take a look at them quickly, and then we will talk about the positives and the negatives. So we have two central perspectives, this one and the second one. We don't really need something like this. One is enough. Then we have this close-up on the side windows and the second one on the corner. And then we have two evening versions. And we're back at the first shot. So to be honest, modeling and texturing wise, the project seems rather decent, both when it comes to the house and its surroundings. The texture mapping really, why can't I talk today? The texture mapping really leaves a good impression. I like how the mapping just goes around the corner here instead of just being a box mapping that is just continuous the way it is here. So this is pretty cool. Also, generally speaking, the color palette of this project is very pleasant to me personally. Also on the evening shots, it's nice to look at. The lighting is also very good. Again, while we are at the evening shots, I like them, I enjoy them a lot. But the day version is also cool. The sun placement is very nicely chosen. You have this dark foreground and the house can visually stick out, which was the right decision. Now let's talk about the negative parts. First of all, when we take a look at the evening version, which I told you that I liked, it becomes quickly visible that the house is empty. You see that there is nothing on the inside. We have Arthur here, and if you have watched the lesson he and Bartosz uploaded yesterday, you will know how to deal with this one. So obviously you can just put some assets quickly, put some assets from the Cosmos library on the inside so that you have some silhouettes here visible, which will suggest that there is stuff on the inside, that somebody lives there. Because let's analyze this quickly. It's about something psychological. The reason why you decided to add all of those leaves here is because you wanted to add authenticity to your scene. Because it's real life where there are trees, there are fallen leaves. This is just the way it is. But when you have empty interiors, you actually do the opposite. You show, yeah, well, it's authentic on the outside, but not authentic on the inside. So either use some Cosmos stuff, put it on the inside so you have some silhouettes. Partially, you can open those curtains and just show a wall with some wall art and a couch and maybe a pendant or plant or something like this, so that it looks lived in. It's just way more relatable to people. Or you can use a parallax solution. Now, if you are a Corona user, last time I used a parallax solution, it was last summer, I had a big issue with Max always freezing. It worked fine in the end, but I had to have my parallax layer always turned off and only turn it on for the very last render, because other than that it would often crash. I don't know where the issue is. I don't know if it is still a thing, but it was something which was pretty unnecessary, to be honest, because parallax solutions otherwise are awesome. They are a time saver, and with them you don't even need something like this. You don't need to even put some interior lights, because most of the parallax solutions that you can buy also have an evening version with self-illumination. Also, speaking about more technical stuff, if you take a look at your roof, it seems like there is some issue with it. It was visible somewhere. I don't know if I can show it to you right now. The texture and this one, you see this here, it looks like geometry issue. Maybe you have to add a few edges here and there to have better geometry, but also those roof tiles don't look good, to be honest. Framing wise, now the framing is pretty repetitive, especially the first two shots. I don't think you need them both. There is no reason for them. The second one doesn't add a value. If I were to choose between those two, I would go with the first one. First of all, the FOV is way more normal on the first one. And the second thing is that it shows more of the house. So I would just discard the second one and that's it. As for the other two shots, they're interesting, but I gotta admit that it's difficult to point out where exactly the focus should be and which the main actors here are. I cannot really say. Do you want to show the corner or just the general composition here? It's not a bad image. It looks nice. The composition is pretty cool, but it's a bit meaningless. Let's call it like this. And now let's go to the main issue, which is the muted appearance of those images, especially the day ones. Now, when images look like this, when you take a look at them and they appear muted, this means they lack vibrancy, clarity, and contrast. They aren't attractive to viewers. I can tell you this from experience, and I think that you can see it because if we take a look at the number of likes, even though that work is actually a good one, you will see that it's just 2 likes. People just don't click on muted images. So you really have to make sure that your images are vibrant and they are clear and contrasty in order to get the attention of viewers, of potential viewers. So what I did here is I took your image, because this is the good thing. You can actually fix this in the post-production, and you also should. Before you add this project to your portfolio, please fix this, because it really pays off. So this is your version and this is the clarity version. And you see that there is a big difference because this one is more captivating. It's more realistic. It doesn't look muted anymore. It has good vibrance, clarity, contrast to it. So if we compare the two, you will see this one is muted and not that attractive. And this one is still your image, but it is way more attractive, right? So all in all, it's really good work. I recommend you that in future, when it comes to the final outcome of your images, that you take some good references that are visually very appealing and try to follow them for the final look of your images. Of course, references are important for every phase of the project, from the conceptual phase to the materials, the color scheme, everything, the composition. You can use references for every single part of a project, but the most lacking thing for you in the moment seems to be this post-production phase, the way your images end up looking, and you can start by getting some references that help you with this one. And with this being said, let's move on to the next one, which is a composition and lighting study made by Alessio. He writes, personal project, I want to practice with composition and light setups, so I made some render and a video with all my setup, Cinema 4D, Corona 10 and Photoshop. Presentation, as usual, on point, short but really informative. I will open the video, but I'll stop the music, you know how it is. So it's not really an animation, it's more or less an animated presentation. It's just still images fading into each other intact with the music. Again, I don't play the music so that the video doesn't get muted in certain countries. Also, is the logo... come on. Don't do this to me. Come on. Yeah, of course. Now we have the music and I don't seem to be able to stop it. Sorry for that. Hopefully we don't get muted. Anyway, what I was saying is we have this nice music and we have this animated presentation, which is nothing bad with this actually. You just render still images and then you put them together, and this way it feels more interactive, more dynamic too, and a lot of clients actually enjoy it a lot. Regarding the logo, I was asking if this is a new one. Seems like it, or is this the first time I see it? I wanted to ask you why you decided to make this partition here and not as a continuation of this line. So like here, I know this isn't the most important topic here, but you know, something like this. I think it would be more dynamic this way, to be honest. But yeah, this is just a side thing. Anyway, composition wise, it's the dot of the eye. I know it's the dot of the eye. It's very visible, but it will still be the dot of the eye if you made the line where I showed you. Anyway, it's your logo. You do what you do. Talking about those images here, composition-wise, I really enjoy this scene a lot. I think it's very nicely arranged and balanced. Composition, the color palette I also very much like. It's this beige combined with different tones of red, most of them being very desaturated. And then you have the chair having the more saturated red, which I think makes a lot of sense in terms of storytelling, because usually red is this alarm color which draws attention, and it makes sense that the chair, which is this piece of furniture that wants you to go there and sit in it, has, let's say, the most prominent color. Mario says, I love the render. Where is the plaster texture from? Yeah, Alessio will probably tell you. Let me continue. Regarding the lighting scenarios, a study like this is always great to see, especially in an educational community like this one, because it also proves how much of an impact lighting has. And it's an immense impact, because we have one and the same scene that can look so different depending on the chosen illumination scenario. So let's go through the shots one by one. Starting with this one, I call it the sunny one. It's probably also my favorite. It's warm, and this directional light that you have coming from the sides also adds a lot of dynamic to it, which I think is really awesome. And the whole thing kind of leads to this chair, which again is kind of like the main actor in this whole composition. After that, we have the less sunny version, which allows for the light to emphasize a certain area. In this case, it is this area down here, or a certain object. I mean, it could be an area, it could be an object. If you put one object into this area, it's more about the object. If it's just the area, then it's just the area, and that's it. Also, this way, the scene looks more like an actual interior, because here we see how the light comes from the left side fully uninterrupted. Like there is no glazing whatsoever, which isn't very typical for, let's say, a fully glazed apartment. While on the second one, this looks like there are some walls or some other windows or whatever to the left, but there is just this one whatever window that lets the sunlight in, which makes it, the whole thing, look more like an enclosed interior. So you see, just with this change, how much differently this image is to be interpreted. Next, we have the less sunny version number 2, which is just a more pronounced rendition of the previous shot. This time, the book is even more prominent, or this light strip here is even more prominent. So again, if you want to draw the viewer's attention onto something, then you can always use light for it. After that, we had this overcast coat, let's call it like this, scenario, which is maybe more realistic than the previous ones, I would say, at least when it comes to colors, but less cozy and also less emotional. On the next one, it's like the overcast warm version of the previous one. The difference is, I mean, in terms of color, it's better. It's again more cozy, more emotional, but it's lacking the feel light that we had. So you see how important something like a feel light is. So, sorry, wrong direction. You see here, we have this bluish, more natural looking feel light, which gives this nice shadow gradient on the backside of the chair. Here, we don't have it, so the backside of the chair looks more or less just like a continuous black color, and this is not so great. Next, we have a bit of a filtered version of this two light scenario, so I'll just skip to the next one, which is, I think, the original. This one is obviously very atmospheric, almost theatralic, because you have these two objects with light pointed, spotlighted directly onto them. It's of course kind of dramatic, but it's also pretty cool. I like it. Next we have this one light version. In my opinion, you should have left the other light on, because again, we talk about this since the beginning. This chair, I think, is the main actor, the main eye catcher. So I think if the last thing being illuminated, the last thing standing, should be the chair and not the plant. And then we have this, let's say, starter image when it's just a fill light, which is coldish, more like a natural light. And that's it. It's just a great study. I'll skip the animation. On the negative side, the stone floor texture and the concrete on the baseboard textures I find to be rather flat looking. They look nice generally, but kind of flat, as if you only used bump but no displacement. Especially with the floor, you really need the displacement, because you have this flat, low camera, so the irregularities in the surface will be really visible. And currently, to me at least, it looks quite flat. If you already have displacement, then just give it a stronger value. If you don't want it to go up, just use the negative values. And the next thing is maybe that those baseboards could profit from some chamfering. And that's it. Really, really nice study. Alessio, thanks for sharing this. And we move on to, I think this is the last cover image, or the last image that was featured on our cover for today's episode. It's by Houssem, and it's inspired by an AI, which is very interesting. Thanks, you're very welcome, Alessio. It's a hotel reception area project done with Chaos Corona 3ds Max with the help of Bridge and Photoshop, and the inspiration is a generative AI image by Sébastien Ollier. This is the image. Initially, you hadn't uploaded it, Houssem, so I searched for it, but really wasn't able to find it, so it's great that you shared it. One must admit that it's not immediately recognizable as AI anymore. If I would see it just featured somewhere, I would think, oh yeah, looks nice, it's a cool photograph. So yeah, AI is certainly developing. Regarding your description, very informative, very intriguing. Again, in future, gladly just share a link to your inspiration or your reference. It just helps me and of course others to just follow through and just see what your inspiration was. As for the image presentation, it is really great. It is visually consistent and also nicely varied. So it's a pleasure to just want to click on those images and take a look at them. So as it seems, you took this as an inspiration and then decided to develop it further, which is always okay and always great, actually. And then you also made different angles out of this project, which again is pretty cool. The general impression of this restaurant that you created here is really good. The mix of the natural lighting coming from the large glazing and the artificial lighting on the outside is really good and really fits the location most of all. The color palette is great, very inviting, very soothing. The modeling and texturing seem to be on point. The modeling has a nice amount of detail. It's absolutely sufficient, absolutely enough. Not too much, but also not enough. The assets that you have used seem to be of very good quality. Gladly tell us where you have them from. I don't think they are from the Cosmos library. Maybe some are. The material properties look very authentic. Now, this is something which is actually very, very important if you want to achieve photorealistic renderings. That the materials that you depict look like the actual real-life material. So wood, for example, should look hard, but not as hard as metal, also not as glossy as metal. And wood plank made out of massive wood and a veneer should also look differently. Fabric needs to look soft but still have the tension that it usually has, especially on cushions like here. So there are a lot of these material properties that you need to depict in the right way in order to actually make your image believable. And this is very much the case with Houssem's work here. Composition wise, I think that most of the angles are really good, or at least half of them, especially the first and the last one I enjoy the most. The first one, what I like here so much in the original reference, it's just an empty ceiling. In your case, you decided to actually add those lamps, which are actually dark. So what you're adding here are dark lamps in front of a dark ceiling, but still they stick out this nicely. Why? Because we have these great big openings to the right, which allow a lot of natural light to come in, and this natural light brightens up those lamps, those pendants. And given that you have the dark ceiling and the dark back wall, the naturally illuminated pendants can now really nicely stick out, and you see how great they look. As for the last shot, it is of course a great way to appreciate the visual connection between the inside and the outside. I know this HDRI, I think it's one from Polyheaven. It's a really, really beautiful one. I also wanted to use it somewhere because what you see is just phenomenal. So it makes a lot of sense to actually show what the people who sit on the inside actually would see looking out. And the next thing I really want to compliment here is the way that you arranged everything. So you see we have this column here, and there is a certain rhythm to those columns. They're always in the same distance, but what you did is you didn't place the couch and all the assets directly in the middle of this column. So you didn't go for a full perfect symmetry because, again, real life isn't perfect and isn't as idealistic as we tend to often depict it in visualizations. So what we have here, you just pushed it a bit to the side, and this way it looks way more naturally placed. Same with the grout here on the floor or the lamp here. We still have, generally speaking, if I take a distant look at this image, I still see it be very symmetrical, but it's not perfectly symmetrical because these overly perfected images, they're almost too idealistic, which makes them look less realistic. As for the other two angles, let's go back here. The first one or the second one, what I don't like here as much is that the area where something happens, the waiter bringing the woman her coffee or taking it away, barely fit, or they don't fit. Like the woman fits, but the waiter doesn't fit anymore. So in my opinion, you should shift the whole camera to the left so that you don't show that much of an empty area to the right, but show how the waiter is giving the woman her coffee. And as for the third shot, I think that this plant covers a bit too much. I actually want to see more of the furniture and less of this generic plant. So, and also if I were you, I would add more motion blur, but only to the upper body of this mannequin, of this 3D person, of the waiter, so that it looks more realistic and adds a bit of dynamic to the shot. But in conclusion, as usual and as expected, great work. Oh, one thing you need to fix. Sorry, I forgot this. The floor. There is some issue with the floor. The patterning seems quite strange. Usually what we have is this brick bond pattern. This is even the case in your reference. It's just this brick bond pattern. And in your case, it's just like this weirdly looking straight pattern. And the second thing is there is this repetitive texture here, which is sometimes mirrored, but you really definitely need to fix this and make the floor look more authentic before you add it to your portfolio, because it takes away some of the realism, and this is really, really unnecessary in this case. Let me check the comments. Simon says, Houssem, is it possible to have a floor like this in real life? Oh, okay, so we're talking about a floor. I have never seen something like this, but probably it is way of putting planks. Houssem says, yes, it is possible. It is very untypical. And I think when you do something like this, I wouldn't necessarily go for something which is very unusual, because it makes, as you see, it makes people question it. Now, if the floor plays a major role into the visualization that you're making, then gladly do it this way. Make a special floor, make some very interesting bond. But if the floor is just very secondary, like it is in this case, go for something more classic, because as you see with Simon's question, people start questioning it. Leslie asked for the HDRI. Houssem will certainly share it, but it's one from Polyheaven. You just have to look for a natural one with mountains and so on, you'll find it. Okay, let's move on. We are an hour and 12 minutes in, and we are at, I don't know, which project was it? The 7th, this was the 7th project we discussed. Now it's time to change the topic a bit and talk about an interview that Nikos shared with the group. It's a talk with Michelle Baida from the, how is it called? Inflection Point Conversations podcast. And it's really nice. I watched it yesterday. If you want to get to know Nikos better, and if you want to see and discover how natural the connection between him and his philosophy, the creative lighting philosophy is, you really gotta see this one, because it is just it is not one of those cases where somebody was just looking for a job. Like Nikos was here, had to put food on the table. What do? I'll just make a course. No, you can see that Nikos really lives and really believes in what he is teaching. And I think that something like this is seldom, but it is very contagious. And this is exactly how it should be. When somebody is explaining something to you, when somebody is teaching you something, they should also inspire you by doing so. They should make you also want to see it the same way and get this passion they have. And this definitely is the case with Nikos. And Michelle really asks nice questions, lets him talk a lot so that he can explain himself. It's a really cool interview. It's half an hour. I see Claudio in the comments. Say hi to Claudio. It's an excellent interview indeed. I very much enjoyed it. Nikos was greatly prepared, Michelle too. So also there was a hint for a big announcement in the show. I don't know what it is, but maybe if you watch it, you get some idea about it. So if you have missed it, give it a try. Next, we have something really special, a project that is actually should be familiar because we discussed it on the last show. It's a project by Takur. He says, hi friends, changes done after feedbacks from these Tuesday shows. Yeah, the feedback from last show. Let me show you the feedback. So here you see me explain and masterfully draw stuff in real time. But it was important to explain to Takur my points, and I will use all the means necessary, even if it is an ugly drawing like this. So the points that I talked about here was that there was a ton of stuff in front of each other without the necessary form and color contrast. Also, composition-wise, it was unbalanced. Everything was happening down here, and up here there was nothing. So I suggested something like a palm tree leaf going into the image from the right to fulfill this composition and to balance it out. And it seems Takur went back, reworked his work, listened, and then you see the final result. So he was cool enough to actually share the previous two images, so you see them, and we can all see this direct comparison. And let me tell you, this is a huge improvement. This is just like an amazing improvement. Now, what we have here is beautiful form, both form and color contrast. Everything is distinct. While here, it was almost difficult to figure out the single forms. Now everything is absolutely, you have the feeling that you can just reach in and just grab it. It's just so awesome. The composition is now balanced. You see this? My leaf was better, but this is also okay. So you see how the composition is now closed. It is now balanced. The areas that were a bit empty here now have these secondary leaves, but they are blurred out, rightfully so that we can still concentrate more onto this composition down here. But as a whole, we have a balanced image. So this is awesome. Also, it has been a very smart decision to match the plant color-wise to the wall, because we still have the form contrast. You see the bright and the dark sides of the pot, same with the plant. So we have something here. It's not an empty area, but it doesn't stick out too much and it doesn't overload the color composition. Should it have been green, then it would have been too much, because we have the greens down here and the greens up here. Green, we don't need green in the middle anymore. The materials also generally look way better now. It's just the way it should be. It's a great, great image. And do you know what made it possible? It's two things. In first place, of course, Takur's dedication and effort to go back and actually rework this. But what did he base his update on? The feedback he got from the show. This is it. So should there be people who still have doubts if feedback is as important as I always say that it is, let me remind you about Georgi, about Seraphim, about Chirchi. Even though her Scotland house wasn't great, the second time it was a big improvement. Last time we had Amir, now we had Takur. All of those people listened to the feedback. It doesn't matter if it's my feedback or if it's feedback provided in the Keeping It Realistic chat or in the group by other members. What matters is that there is feedback, which is well meant and which is constructive and covers most of the points that are to cover. As long as this feedback is there and people are then dedicated and are eager to put in the time and effort to recreate their work and to make it better, I haven't seen a case where the improvement wasn't significant. This is like already the 5th case of somebody who does this, and it is just amazing. And you remember in the pilot episode in September, I told you how I was missing this, and this was the reason why I started giving people feedback, because nobody was giving something like this to me, and I was eager. I had this dedication, and I would have put in the time to rework my stuff, but nobody was telling me anything, and I dearly missed it. So now you have it, and this is why it's so important that it's not only me, because, I'm here today, but what if tomorrow I decide to go out and become a gardener because I'm fed up with spending time in front of the PC? What happens then? Will the group just have no feedback and no community more anymore? This couldn't be the case. We should all be this community and we should all help each other, because the ones of us, not everybody, this is just how life is, not everybody will listen to this feedback, not everybody will profit from it. Some people just don't want to learn, they're learn resistant, as it is called in German. They won't advance. And if you see that somebody is like that, if you see that you just provide feedback and provide help and people don't improve, at some point I also don't feel like doing it anymore. But those who do, if you encounter, this is like since September, this is the 5th time when I see such an improvement, I can express how awesome this thing feels. to really know that you have helped somebody, and you don't only know it, you see it, and others see it as well. I see in the comments here Leslie saying very huge difference. Wow, this is the case. So let us continue this way. Let every one of us try to help the others and provide as much feedback and help as possible, because we will rock it. It really helps. And it doesn't only help the core. Honestly, lots of the times when I give feedback like this is actually what I assume, right? So this is how I think that it should be. It is based on a lot of years of experience, on lots of things that I have seen. But again, it's an assumption. The fact that he went back and actually did it, and I visualized what I meant, gives me more self-esteem, because I know, hey, what I say here actually is true most of the time. This is cool. So it's, again, not only something Takur profits from it. I also profited from this, because it's like I had a thesis. I think this should look better this and this and this way. And Takur went and actually got me the evidence for my thesis. So I know that I'm right, and I see it, and this gives me a lot of self-esteem. This gives me a lot of joy to my heart and soul to see this. So this feels really special to me. Takur says, thank you for making these shows, and your feedbacks are really very helpful to learn and improve our work. This makes me emotional. I'll stop reading, but you're very welcome. Let's move on to Georgi with his small practice scene. He writes, hello community, we present another rendering of interior. Working time is 3 hours. It's done in Max Corona Photoshop. Now, in this case, I was not sure. I started preparing to give certain feedback. Then Georgi told me that this scene is actually based on a tutorial video from the Corona YouTube channel, as far as I know. Yeah, it's called Getting Started with Chaos Corona for 3ds Max. So it's a very starter basic video. And I think we just saw the scene here, and I think you recreated it greatly. This must be said. It has really good contrast and clarity to it, actually better than the original. The assets are nice. It's Cosmos stuff, but it's also very exact to what was shown in this video. The composition is pleasant, and the 3 hours that you have spent to make it are also nicely done. So the thing is, however, here we're talking more about just a general thought process rather than the image anymore. The video that you followed, again, it's called Getting Started with Chaos Corona for 3ds Max, and it's like a 5-minute video, right? So obviously, of course, sections of it are sped up, but the goal of this video wasn't to create an image which is great looking, fascinating, whatsoever. It is a very basic and generic scene that they created just to showcase how Corona is to be used, how to use the Cosmos library, how you can import stuff from it, and so on. So, as the goal of this video was not to create a fascinating scene, the thing that you recreated, even though it is an exact copy, even better than the original, still is like a basic and generic image which isn't that fascinating. So in situations like this, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't do stuff like this, because why not? It's a great practice. What I'm saying is, once you did it, you gotta evaluate how to furtherly proceed. So the first option is to just take it as a base, as a foundation, and just start adding to this scene. So you have something like a living room here. What you can do next is add a coffee table, or just make it in a full-blown living room that you can then take some really good shots from. If you don't want to, if you just wanted to recreate what was there and then call it a day, then maybe you can take the second path, which is by just keeping it to yourself. Again, not every project one creates, being it a personal exercise or a commercial one, needs to immediately be shared. I have projects like this, and I'm sure every artist has them. Mir have them too, by the way, where we just do it for the money or to train something, if it's like a personal project, and then we just keep it in a drawer somewhere in the basement behind a door with a label on it. Be careful, there is a tiger inside, so nobody gets it. So it's just our stuff. We got the money or we got the experience, and then we just move on. But once we share it, we by sharing we try to achieve something. Let's say we try to reach out to a certain audience, if it's his fellow artists or maybe potential clients. And if a potential client sees this, I don't think that they will be amazed by it. I think that they will be like, okay, it looks kind of generic. Maybe it's an ad for whatever, this sofa or the wall art, and they'll just move on. And this is not what you want. So when you do something like this, really critically evaluate how you want to proceed with it further. And my personal recommendation is, if it is a simple exercise, something like this, keep it to yourself, or maybe be smart about it. As you already have a bit of stuff here, maybe put something onto this table instead of this empty whatever this is. Put a glass, something beautiful, and then make a close-up. Maybe you can make 1 or 2 close-ups with some nice depth of field on the armrest of the couch, facing the stuff that you have put onto this table. You have nice reflections because you have some stuff around it. And then you can maybe extract those close-ups instead of the whole scene. But always try to think ahead and really critically evaluate what kind of an impact your project and your images will have. Okay, let's move on to Sepper actually sharing something that is quite interesting. It seems like a scam, but what is scary here, and this is why I'm thankful for Sepper for bringing this to our attention, is how legit this company looks like. Because take a look at what we see here on the side. Take a look at this screenshot. It looks really, really legit, like some real big, serious company. But if you take a look at the screenshots and the talk he has with one of the managers in this company, you will find out that this is definitely fishy. I mean, just take a look at this script here. It says, okay, let me open it in a different window so that we can see it. It says, you don't need to worry about prices. Per plans online, we pay $2,500. That's what we pay for a single plan, right? So if we do 4 plans, it's like $10,000. Not an issue. Are you going with that? So first of all, the English is pretty questionable. But second, if you hear that somebody's like, oh, money is not a problem, whatever you want, we pay like $2,500 per whatever, then just leave the conversation and block them and move on. Really. Next we have Amjad with a cafe made in Blender and Psychos. It's obviously a part of the project because he says wait for the rest of the design. Generally, my recommendation is that you share your works as a whole and not share part of them and then later another part, because people will be like, oh, I saw this, but I already forgot it. So it's always better to show it at once. If it's not something like, interior area and then there is a terrace area or something like this. Anyway, let's take a look at it. What I like, you can see it already very nicely onto this small thumbnails here, is the bold color scheme, the nice contrast between the whites, grays, the saturated beiges, and this really saturated dark green, which, by the way, very nicely goes with the plants used. The design and depiction of the bar area, I'm also a fan of. First of all, the scattered assets here, they really make a difference because they leave this lively and an authentic impression, because you didn't only scatter the same stuff like a million times, but you made sure to have different stuff. It's okay to have 2 or 3 of something, but then the next thing should come so that it's not just monotonous. And the next thing is, I really like how those bar lamps and those curtains have the same visual and architectural language. They really, really nicely fit together. Also, I'm a fan of the natural lighting coming from the openings. It looks really nice, also very authentic. The artificial lighting, however, I don't think works so greatly. So you see here on the first shot, we have those spotlights, but their light isn't really visible anywhere. And then on the bar scene, you can say these two are turned on. They look also very pretty the way they are. But if we take a look at the next shot, which is a close-up of the counter, this counter area here, you will see that it is absolutely insufficiently illuminated. So those lamps just do a really poor job at what they're supposed to do. Also, looking at this one and the next shot, it seems like the area behind the bar is really, really scarce. So I think that this cafe will need a child barista in order for somebody to be able to actually work there, because this is just underdimensioned, severely so. Next, I think it was visible on the first shot, this arched opening here. So the fillet corners of it, they look kind of strange, like there is some issue with the geometry or with the texture or with both. So gladly check it and maybe fix it. And then let's talk about the close-up. You know, I'm a fan of close-ups. I usually very much enjoy them. But in this case, this has a lot of potential, but the way it looks now is not good. First of all, the area of focus, which is this one, is very underexposed. The running water, in my opinion, doesn't make a lot of sense at all, because why should the water be running? It's not like, a bathtub. Again, a bathtub, if you let the water run in a bathtub, it makes sense, because this is what people actually do in real life. They go into their bathrooms, turn on the faucet so that the bathtub starts filling with water, and then they move on, right? They leave the room and go somewhere else. And this is the moment where somebody can actually take a photo. Now, if it is, let's say, a promotional shot for some faucet producer, then it also makes sense to turn it on just for the sake of it, to show how it works. But in this case, I don't see a reason for this to flow and to fill up the sink. Also, the backwall texture looks pretty weird to me. It's like a chalk drawing of bricks on a green wall. I don't know what it is supposed to be, but it looks kind of strange. And last but not least, this black and white version. It's actually not a black and white version, or it is a black and white version, but with the reds still being on. Similar to Leslie's work, I don't see that much value in. Still, with all of this being said, I would say that this is a really promising work, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing the rest of it. But maybe it's a recommendation to actually invest a bit of time and examine the points that I just mentioned to maybe make it better. Georgi says, thank you, Tudor. This is my pleasure, dear Georgi, and best of health to you. Next, we have Amir, who I just mentioned Amir as I was talking about the coursework. In the past, I was often pretty harsh to Amir. I even skipped some of his works because I didn't think that he put enough effort into and love into them and attention. And I don't like this, to be honest. I think this is not very respectful, but it seems like recently he actually decided to change something. Maybe it's his New Year's resolution, but again, what we talked about on the last show, he had improved his work a lot based on the feedback in this show, and he has shown a lot of improvement. And now we have this pretty solid commercial project of his, so let's take a closer look. It's a small bathroom. Design and render time was 2 days, which is solid timing, really. The software is 3ds Max. Gladly also share the render engine as well. I hope to get a feedback about the design and render to improve it text in advance. Very polite way of asking for feedback. It just feels better this way, to be honest. So first and foremost, let's go through the images. So we have this classic sink, wash table, mirror, central perspective, the opposite side, which is like this thing here. Then we have, let's call it a close-up of the front wall installation with the toilet bowl, the bidet, shower head, the flush button, and the, how is it called? The toilet paper holder. And then we have another close-up of the sink area. So what I can immediately say is that I don't see that lack of care that I often criticized about your previous works. It's a clean and solid job. The modeling seems pretty precise, as you see here, also with the drop ceiling. The materials look and behave nicely, mostly. The lighting works fine, and the design and color scheme are also quite pleasant and also fit this type of space. So I think it's really, really solid job. Now, if you want to improve, here are some suggestions. Let's start actually with this toilet bowl area, this one here. So what the improvement here would be in terms of item placement. So both, or the flush button, the toilet paper holder, and the shower, the bidet shower head, all must be placed higher. And also the toilet paper holder, I think, would be more convenient to be placed on the side wall rather than on the back wall, because it's just more convenient to use it like this, right? And I'll show you a reference about this. Look at this one. If you're not sure, let's say you're not an architect, if you're not sure where and how to place things, always search for references. You see, with a quick search, toilet bowl, narrow bathroom, it's a really simple search, I was able to find something which very much resembles the situation that you have. You have a narrow wall, you have a front wall installation. This thing, just technically, but it never is bad to know stuff. This thing is called a front wall installation, and it is used to hide all the plumbing behind it in a very clean and nice way. And the top of it is usually just a shelf where you can put stuff like toilet paper rolls, or in this case something decorative. So it usually has this height here, which is around meter 20, and it has this height exactly for the flush button to be higher, so that it is convenient to be pushed while standing. Just some architectural info for you. So you see it here in both cases. Actually, here the bidet shower head is also a bit higher, so that this cable here isn't touching the ground. And here the toilet paper holder is on the side wall, so that it is again more convenient to use. Now, in situations like this with a front wall installation, I can partially understand if somebody wants to actually put it here, because in order to place it onto this wall, you have to actually drill into wall tiles, while if you want to place it here, you just drill in wood, which is obviously way easier. Nevertheless, just enough about this part. When it comes to the other side, I would say it very much depends on the way this door opens. If it opens inwards, I would actually mirror this whole thing so that the sink is closer to the left wall. If it opens outwards, it's good the way it is. And the mirror itself, this is a bit of a small sign of this laziness that I just mentioned. You see, I think you have just taken this blurry chrome from here and you have just applied it onto the mirror, but this is not how a mirror should look like. A mirror is actually a plane with a material which is pitch dark, and it has the reflectivity and glossiness values of 1.0, or let's say you can have a glossiness of 0.98 or something like this. And if you want to make it a tad more realistic, just add some noise into the bump slot and give it a very, very, very low value, something like 0.01, 0.02, and that's it. When it comes to the framing, the central perspectives are actually very good. The angled views, not so much. On this one, it's actually nice to see, let's say, the faucets and the stuff that you have used, the series, a bit better. It's a good idea, but what's not so good is that this toilet bowl barely fits. And this is a psychological thing. It's a subconscious thing that people just when they see something that barely fits into an image, they have the feeling that the space around is either very narrow or kind of too cramped. So it's an easy fix. Just give your cropping, extend it downwards, give it a bit more space, and then you see it doesn't look so narrow anymore. And as for this one, I personally don't get this one. I don't know what you're trying to show here. I don't like it as much. Also, by the way, be more careful with your UV mapping. But here, again, you can maybe go just for a close-up on some of these bottles or on the faucet. But other than that, I think you can discard this image. And with this thing being said, generally speaking, your projects in last times are definitely a step ahead. So please keep it up this way. It pays off. Next, I gotta mention this one. It's Ruhula. I won't be talking about the projects themselves, but I want to introduce this artist to you because I know him from the VW Art Club. He's often featured there, and his works are of constantly good quality. They usually have this very similar visual style among each other, which are those desaturated colors and materials, mostly monochrome with a lot of warm beige or warm gray, a lot of wood, as you see on both projects, and soft and pleasant lighting. Now, we'll just go through those images and then move on, but if you are into, because what he mostly seems to concentrate on is designing and depicting, I would call it modern Scandinavian minimalism. His materials, his modeling are very much on point. The framings are mostly very fine. So if you need some inspiration, if you do something like this, gladly refer to Ruhula's works, because you see, just take a look at this very, very gentle framing here. You see to the left, we have this bright corner of the shelves here, of the drawer, surrounded by darkness. And then on the right side, we have more or less the same, just the other way around. We have this dark shadow surrounded by the bright wall and the bright floor. So Ruhula is really makes very elegant framings, and they're usually a pleasure to look at. So again, if you need some inspiration, especially when it comes to this type of visualizations or this type of architecture, gladly check his works. It is really inspirational to me as well. In the meantime, I think I can say that I really can see his style and his works immediately without even reading his name atop of it. And again, it is really good quality work and very catalog-like, but without feeling too staged or too fake. So yeah, let's see this as an artist introduction. Next, we have Sachit with a project situated in the USA, in Glendale, California, done in Max and V-Ray and Vantage as well. Let's take a look at the images, and I must admit that I really dig the atmosphere Sachit achieved here. It has something really cool to it, something very authentic to it, something very Glendale. And I would say let's go through the images one by one, starting with the first one, which I actually don't find that great, to be honest, because the lighting is coming from behind the camera, and as you know, when this happens, this tends to make for a very flat image, as it is the case here. The plants are also kind of too dark, especially in comparison to the grass, to the flat areas of the grass here, or to the trees of the HDRI in the back. You see it here. So this doesn't look good. And also the framing, I think, and the cropping should be extended both to the left and the right, because it is similar to the toilet bowl with the mirrors work. There is just not enough space here and here with the pickup car. The second shot is way better in this regard. Here we have the camera facing in this direction and the light coming from here. So we have something like a 90-degree angle between camera viewing direction and light, which is always great because it makes for a way better image, which is not flat. The third one is a bit of a mixed bag because I find it interesting to place the camera this low, to be honest, but actually it needs a good reason for that. So I'll show you an example of mine. Here I placed the camera quite low, just let's say 15 centimeters above the grass level, and I even placed it into a shrub. Why I did it, however, was in order to showcase that this huge glazing of the house is actually something awesome because it faces so much greenery. And this is why, to even enhance this effect, to even emphasize how much greenery there is facing this glazing, I put the camera into the greenery, and of course I moved it around until I reached a good framing regarding the house, but also this natural framing with the leaves around. In your case, however, I don't see the reason for an angle like this, because what it does now mostly is actually put a lot of attention onto the walkway to the house. And there is no real good reason for this, because it's a very boring and monotonous walkway. Usually walkways like this, at least in Europe, are made out of concrete precast parts, which put together make for a more interesting image. They also have growths between them, they don't look alike, so it's more interesting. In the USA, however, it is mostly cast on site, so it's concrete cast on site, something like this. But even in situations like this, they actually tend to make some fake grouts, because it's like a layer of concrete, and atop of it they make some fake grouts. And there is a good reason for that, as you saw here in the image. First of all, it looks better. Those fake grouts provide a certain structure to this walkway. And the second thing is, these grouts also act as expansion joints. And again, we're getting a bit technical here, but expansion joints are these gaps that allow for the natural movement of concrete or materials in general due to, let's say, temperature changes or settlement. So let's say it gets really, really warm, then the concrete will extend a bit. But if it is a continuous block like this one, it cannot really extend in itself and cracks appear. If you have those grouts, if it extends a bit, it uses the grout to extend and no cracks will appear. This is the reason behind this. So let's go to the next two shots, which are my favorite ones. This just shows the surroundings of the house in a great way. It's a pleasure to look at it, because one can imagine how these people are going to live there, surrounded by greenery. It's great. What I don't get about this one is why you decided to go for such a low focal length. There is no reason for that. You have plenty of space. Just pull the camera back and then go for a higher focal length value, and then there won't be such a heavy distortion. And the last one is my absolutely favorite one. I personally gladly do images like this when I work on exteriors, on interiors as well. And then before I deliver the final images to the clients, I also present them images like this, and I ask them if they eventually want to buy them as well. And believe it or not, most of the times, especially if it's not the people who actually are going to live into this house, but people who develop it and plan to sell it to a third party, they need images for the booklets they make or for the websites they make. And an image like this is, of course, way more worth than a stock photo, because a stock photo is generic, and this one is bound to the house. You see the house, you don't see it clearly, but you see it in connection to the surrounding, and this is of course way more worth. So if you offer it to your clients for a reasonable price, they actually often tend to actually buy it. And this is like an example here of mine. This is exactly why I did this shot here. I obviously don't show the house because you see it's blurred out, but I show the lantern. I want to emphasize how beautiful, how delicate, how elegant the surroundings of this future house are, and it's way better for the clients to use this image in their booklet instead of some generic stock photo from whatever. Let's move on to Sepia. This is a very interesting project. He says, human life will strange changes in the future when the moon changes the color of the sun and descends on the earth without any heat. This is what happens. Simon says he gives these vignettes for free. It very much depends on the client. If it was like a big project, if everything was very harmonious with our work together, I also often gift something like this to clients. But if it's like more of those, because if at some point, if you start gifting too much, clients very quickly get used to it and then start expecting it in future. So I sometimes give them, but I also kind of sell them, but again, for a reasonable low price. And it's a win-win for both sides because I get some money for this and they get a nice image which enhances their portfolio and their booklet or whatever they're doing. So again, mostly it's a win-win. Now back to Seper's project. I really want to make it within 2 hours, but let's take a look. So yeah, dear Seper, if the moon, it doesn't matter if it changes color or not, if it descends on Earth, there won't be anything there. It will deplete just everything here and there won't be any life, any buildings, anything. It won't be any Earth anymore. The way we know it, at least. But this one, the way you depicted it really, really reminds me of the Sphere in Las Vegas, which has been very popular in recent times. And this is actually great. I very much enjoy this, the contrast, the color contrast between the high-rise buildings, which are also so blocky, and then this very soft hemisphere form of the descended moon. And the color of it. So it's a very pleasant scene. I'm not sure if you need this type of atmosphere here, like it's war or whatever. I think you can just go for a more, I don't know, you can just place a casual house, like a suburban house here in the front, and then it's just this image which for some will resemble the Sphere in Las Vegas, for others will just be a cool image, and that's okay. That's fine, to be honest. Next, I gotta talk about this. Yesterday, Arthur shared a new free lesson from the Common Point Masterclass done by Bartosz and himself. He writes, "Hello, fellow artists. New free lesson from the Common Point Masterclass is available on YouTube. In this one, you can learn the theory of nighttime logic and a 4-step workflow designed for night shots. Tap into all the artistic and commercial possibilities the nighttime renderings can offer with this free video. Link is in the comments. You can find it down here. Let me extend this. Yeah, link is here. Hope you enjoyed. Software is Corona and Max, Bartosz and Arthur. I watched it yesterday. It's pure theory. And it's actually seems like a lot to take. But the way Bartosz and Arthur explain everything, it always makes so much sense. They explain it in such an easy and understandable way that it is really easy to just immediately comprehend it and immediately start implementing and using it. So, as usual, big thanks to those two for sharing their awesome knowledge with us and preparing these really well-structured lessons. As far as I can tell, this is part 1, so probably next month we'll have part 2, where it's more about practice rather than theory. But please, again, as with everything back in school or university, we cannot only rely on practicing stuff, we also need to learn theory. So if you see that something is mostly theory, don't just discard it, but read or watch into it, because it is important. Everything people learn has a theoretical part as well. Okay, and these two I will very quickly make, probably in 5 minutes, and then we'll have made something like 16 projects within 2 hours, which is really a new record. So this is a project by Mahmoud. It's a project in Cairo, a very, let me just remove the rest here, a very atmospheric one. So you see this project, even though it's complex when it comes to materials, I think most of those are scans, but still it's mostly about emotion. And this is a great thing. Sometimes we need to do projects that are not about realistically depicting a certain building or interior, but just let our emotions go free and then make something which is just beautiful or which is just good for our soul as an artist, for our creativity. That's something that recharges our batteries. And I think this is the case here with Eldoki Street. And the guy you see here, he's really sweet. I really like him. I really like the way you have implemented him. He very much fits the setting, obviously, but he desperately also needs contact shadows, because the upper part of his body actually, even though it doesn't quite fit the direction of the chair, it still very much matches what we see here around. But the bottom part, especially his feet, they're just levitating. So it looks like something which was just cut out and put on top of the rendering. So yeah, he needs more work here. The details, they're really emotional, really wonderful to look at, very typical for the location. Absolutely, you can see it here. I've never been there, but I've seen enough documentaries to know that this is very, very authentic. This one, again, as well, it's just the amount of detail, the nice textures, it's just a pleasure to look at. This is how the scene looks like in the evening. Personally, it has a very mellow atmosphere to it, which is enjoyable, but I find it almost a bit underwhelming, especially in direct comparison to the day scene. And here we have this wonderful clay model. It's just, sometimes, I gotta admit, sometimes I prefer clay models over textured ones. I'm not sure why I'm such a sucker for good clay models, but their simplicity and them being reduced to light and shadow is sometimes something that I actually appreciate more than the final textured version. And here is a black and white version. It's the third time for today that there is a black and white version of images that seems like very popular in recent times. Yeah, of course, the main shot is probably my favorite one. It's just very emotional, and I love this dude. He's just great here, and he so greatly fits there. You can imagine him sitting there the whole day, chatting with random people passing by, drinking his coffee, smoking the ton of cigarettes that you see on this table. Just take a look at this corner up here. It's awesome. It's just a very pleasant project to look at. And now let's move on to the last one, which is a work by Sebastian, writing, "Hello everyone, I want to share with you a project that I completed a few months ago. It is a commercial project that combines two projects where I worked on interior and exterior visualizations, merging them into one comprehensive project with surroundings. There was more work on the surroundings than I anticipated, and it was a pain for my PC, but it was fun to work on a project like this. Criticism is welcome as always. Have a nice day." It's done in Max, Corona, and Photoshop. Great description, by the way. And now let's take a look at the project. It's repetitive a bit, but this is to be expected. It's just this type of thing. But what you did greatly, and I must admit it, is, of course, when we see something like this, of course, first thing we see is the repetition, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Now, what can we do about this repetition? I think most of it you actually already did. If we zoom in a bit, we will see that there are these areas here where the plants are kind of random. Sometimes there are some these whitish plants and the green plants. Sometimes there is even a tree. So definitely there are certain zones where you had some flexibility and you use this flexibility. The other thing are the driveways, because obviously the driveways are a part of the architecture, but what happens on those driveways is of course something that depends on the inhabitants of those houses. This is why occasionally you had a car parked in there. I think that you could have even parked more cars there, but probably this would have made it even more difficult for your PC and you didn't want to completely kill it. But of course you can park a motorcycle, you can park two cars, you can put a tent in there as if there is some kind of a small occasion where guests are coming and the people decided to put 1 or 2 tents for their guests in the sunny day. So yeah, where you can put a bit of variation is in these driveways, in these areas here. I think that with a project like this, the client demanded that the grass areas are also look alike, because everybody who is living in this community, this almost looks like a gated community, has to, cut their grass every Saturday in order for everything to look tidy and so on. So there isn't that much you can do. Other things you can do is to not use the same roof tile. Yeah, roof tile. Roof tiles, I mean, they don't have to be monocolored. If you have a monocolor, this is okay, but then you can always add a bit of variation to it, like just 1% variation in the tonality or in I don't know, maybe the contrast, the darkness of it, so that the roofs start looking a bit more unique, just a tiny bit. This is a small difference which probably isn't immediately visible, but still, what you want to do here is to show that even though the repetition is there and is given, you want to actually, there is still some individuality possible. But I think you already did a good job. If possible, with your new machine, I think you can just add a bit more assets in these general areas. Maybe you can put a swing or some stuff for the kids, a small pool somewhere here, so that it becomes a bit more unique. Each house becomes more unique. Nevertheless, this looks really nice. The surroundings look pretty cool. I really like it. Then there is this one shot where the street is nicely visible. I think it was the next one. I really like the dynamic of this one, because we have this nice corner here, and we also have this diagonal composition. This is pretty cool. I like it, and it's a big job. This must be said. It's a big and difficult, complex job, and for this it looks really nice. And the next 2 images prove it even more, because usually projects that are made to be viewed as a bird view project or for far above, usually they don't have much detail. So making something like this tends to be quite difficult. But actually you manage to create really good, really detailed atmosphere with this shot, and I really, really like it. What you miss here a bit is a bit of a distance haze and fog, because you see your background is kind of hazy. So here in the distance you would need some also distance fog in order to fuse the background and your rendering more harmoniously. And same goes for the second shot as well. Here the haze is a bit less, but still you have it. So in order for the green in the back not to stick out, but to more harmoniously go with the background, you just need to add some distant haze and maybe in Photoshop desaturate the trees in these back areas. Nevertheless, it's a really big and complex project, and I think you really pulled it off in a very high quality way. So respect for this. And then we end up with the announcements for Thursday's Chaos Campus live show. Sebastian says there is, but I lowered it a lot because the background was too much washout. Yeah, you gotta only apply it. You gotta apply it as a box and only to the really distant background areas, because they aren't nicely visible anyway. To be honest, if we take a look at this, it's not like we really see the houses back here or the greenery. So you just apply a volume material in a box somewhere here so that you can start having this distance fading. So yeah, back to Nikos. Again, let me remind you, in 2 days is the first Chaos Campus live show for this year. Go watch it. Before that, I send the link into our chat here. Check the work by somewhere. It's really something else. It's a big one. So you will probably have some questions about it. Write them down and then let us ask them something on Thursday. And I think most of the guests, if not all of them, have always been very eager to answer all the questions asked, even if the show takes longer than 1 hour. So let us do it this way so this week again. And actually, we really broke our record because the show isn't even the longest one, but it is the show where we actually talked about the most projects. Really, I think it was 16. And also, we also very much interacted with each other, which I very much enjoy. As I said in the beginning, that's why we're doing the show as a live event and not as a recording, so that we can just interact with each other. Sebastian says, thank you. You're very welcome. Alessio, for distance fading, you can achieve it with Corona Sky. It's also good. Claudio says, and 2 new shows are coming to the group as well soon. Oh, this is an interesting one. Probably, I don't know. I wouldn't say probably, but hopefully I will learn something new about those shows and when exactly they're happening on our tomorrow's call. And again, Claudio, if you are, as you're here and you're listening, maybe for this challenge we can feature not only the first prize, so the winner, but also the second and the third prizes, so that the artists in our group get more exposure if you're down with it. So yeah, I think we did a great job today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending some time with me. It was a real pleasure. Yeah, Claudio says he's down, so it seems like the first 3 will be featured. So do your best. Also, stay safe. Have a good rest of the week. Hope to see you again next Tuesday. Same place, same time. Rock on and ciao, my dear friends. Bye.